All right, so let's get to some viewer questions here. One viewer writes, where is my stimulus money? I received the letter, but I never got a direct deposit or a check.
So I wish I could tell you, I don't know. If I had a chance to bring up that person's account, I would. A lot of things depend on the direct deposit. When you filed for 18 or is it 19? In this case, you're saying she got a letter but didn't get the direct deposit. I don't know. Check with your bank, check with your financial institution. One of the things that, and I don't know if it's spelled out in the letter or not, I'm not so sure, but one of the things that in the law, the legislation says that if you'll pass due child support, then that's going to go, your payment's going to go to support that. So I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea for anybody because you don't know anybody's unique set of facts and circumstances, of course, but that's just off the top what I know in general.
Is there a way if perhaps down the road, if that payment never shows up, because I've seen this question quite a bit with hundreds of different people that they've received the letter but no payment anywhere. Is there a way to remedy that if they never receive the money?
Yeah, well, you will generally when you file your return for 2020 and 21. If you didn't get the money and you were eligible for it, either for the economic impact payment itself or for the qualifying children kind of thing, and that's been a little bit of a sticky wicket as well. Then you can put that on your 20 return and get that money then. So that's one of the. Of course, that's not what people want to hear, and I apologize, but I'm just telling you the reality of it is. That these will be distributed to the end of the year for the most part, but then if nobody gets it, if somebody doesn't get it and they're eligible for it, then there's always the 2020 tax return where it can be put in as well. So that's part of things.
I just want to hear it from you. I know we've heard it from experts, but for some reason people don't want to believe it. Do you have to pay the stimulus check back?
No, it's not. You don't have to include it on any tax form. It's not taxable. It's basically, if you think about it, and I believe through the legislation, it's an advance on of a refund in 2020. So yeah, there's no tax consequence. That's kind of the bottom line.
For the tax returns, lots of people are saying that they've filed in January. They filed for 2019, filed in January, filed in February, filed in early March, and still nothing. Is that part of the slowdown you're talking about?
Yeah, it could be, but for that, understanding that, let's say you did file in February, and I don't know if it has to have been processed. In other words, if we process it and got to processing it, then chances are better chances you get an economic impact payment based on that processing. But it depends on how you file. If you file by paper, the other thing that might slow up the process of a tax return is all the filters that are in place that have been there for years anyway to prevent fraud. Or taking a look at a return that might not seem right, maybe that gets pulled aside to get a closer look at it, which means it never gets processed to begin with. So you apologize for that, and those filters in that situation is still in place. But at the same time, for something unprecedented like this, I don't know that for the most part we can bypass that for those returns, because depending on when that came in, if people were working those returns or how are processing them, then that was kind of stopped for the pandemic and all the shutdowns, so that's maybe why the delay is there. But certainly you understand and you apologize for that. But like I say, depends on if you filed in 19, if you processed it or not, then we're going to look at 18, the processing, how you came through and where we were in terms of that specific return. So there's a lot of things going on there. I will say this, and this may not be a great news for everybody, but the Treasury, not necessarily IRS, but the Bureau of Fiscal Service, who sends these things out, as I looked last week at a news release, they've sent out almost 140 million of them.
Right.
And that is just about all. So, so if you look at the enormity of it, understand that's not everybody, and that's not that person who really wants it and hasn't seen it yet, and their situation is unique. It is to say that the speed of this has certainly got us to the point where the majority of them have already gone out, per what I understand from the Treasury Department.
Right. So I'm also talking about just straight tax refunds as well. The processing of that. I mean, now that you guys are kind of starting to come back online, do you anticipate the processing of regular 2019 tax returns is going to speed up?
And we're encouraging people to choose direct deposit and e-file, so it's a paperless return. So that whole deal can be done a lot easier than having to open a paper return and issue a paper check. It's been slowed down. It hasn't been completely stopped, and obviously. The climate, the situation we're in is not making us do our job as perfect as it could be done and in normal times, but we're still asking for, even begging for patience and understanding that behind the scenes, we're doing the best we can to administer and get people what they want. And if they have questions, unfortunately, the phones aren't the spot. It's irs.gov, and it's a pretty good area of information that's being added to hourly and daily, not just for individuals, for businesses, for all the different pieces of legislation in the CARES Act, which includes all the different flexibility for retirement accounts and taking money out of those for, as a hardship for coronavirus, and all the flexibility offered there when you can pull one of those out early and pay back over years. And anyway, you get the idea. There's a lot there, and it's on the IRS website.
So this is for a stimulus payment. If the dependent in 2018 was a true dependent, but then by 2019, that dependent is now 17 or 18 years old, and the parent got a $500 credit when the dependent really didn't qualify, do they have to return that $500?
Generally, no. In that scenario, the answer generally is no. And that information, actually, since you bring that up, is spelled out in many FAQs on irs.gov. So if you go to irs.gov, click on the left bar, there's a bar on the left side, there's rectangles, it says Get Coronavirus Tax Relief. You click on that, there's another link you get to, and there's a whole bunch of FAQs that answer a lot of these questions, and there's dozens of them, and that's one of those that's addressed, basically. So I know I'm not going to be able to get to all of these questions, and you might ask me a few more, but as I think about it, I really want people to understand, if you have access to the internet in one way, shape, or form, and you have questions, getting to our frequently asked questions about this is really a good spot to get some general answers, besides me telling you whatever I can.
And then the last really kind of big one that I keep seeing over and over is there was issues with the third-party tax services, things like H&R Block and TurboTax, setting up these kind of secondary accounts, and the money was going there. Has that all been remedied?
So generally speaking, when you use a refund anticipation loan or a refund anticipation check, as I understand it, it goes to a bank account, a third-party bank, and it's a one-time transaction. That money is going in there once, and then that account is not set up again to take a direct deposit a second time. It's just not how that works. So what I've heard, and this is what generally happens, is that money goes to that account. It should be rejected by that bank, sent back to the IRS, and then we will kick out a paper check, which I know delays the process for the taxpayer. But unfortunately, due to the speed of this, we were just using the direct deposit information we had because we had 2 to 3 weeks to turn around and spin and get this done. And now we're realizing, okay, well, in this case, there is an FAQ on that has a lot more explanation in terms of 3 or 4 paragraphs in the same spot, and you can read about that. But the general answer is, when something gets rejected by a financial institution or a bank or refund, we hope it gets sent back to us and we can kick out a paper check.
And then I have one more because it came up quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's about dependents. Dependents who are claimed as not claimed as dependents, but file their own taxes, but they're between the ages of 17 and 24, and they file their own taxes. Can they get their own stimulus payment?
Yeah, depending on when they filed, because if you're a dependent, no, but if you file a return as your own taxpayer and you qualify, then yes, you could get a check. The law says under age 17 for a dependent. And so that's it. It didn't have legislation in there like normally for students and the such that can still be dependents after that age, depending on where they are as age and at school. So that's why you're seeing a lot of folks who are raising Cain, if you will, because they're 19, 20, or parents have those students at home. That's just how the legislation was written. That's how we're administering it. So unfortunately, there's those situations, but generally speaking, the answer is yes, that could be the case.
If they are 17 and 20, so even if they can be claimed as a dependent but are not claimed and they file their own, they get their payment.
It is possible they can get a payment, yes. But like I say, situations for everybody are different, and that information on the IRS website, so you can read about it.